Innovative Decision Making and Avoiding Poor Decisions, Unit 3, from Chapter 9, Lesson 2, Part 3.
We've looked at decision making from several different angles, so let's take a final look at the steps involved in making a decision. Firstly, there's the recognition of a decision that needs to be made. Here we need to identify the problem or opportunity that is presented. Secondly, diagnosis and analysis. We need to analyze what the causal factors are influencing the decision before us. Thirdly, we need to develop alternatives. What are our feasible options that we can choose between in making this decision? Fourth, the selection of a desired alternative. So which alternative are we going to choose because it is the most desirable outcome? Then, the implementation of the chosen alternative. We've got to use our managerial, administrative, and persuasive abilities to execute the chosen alternative, knowing that not everyone might agree with us. Lastly, evaluation and feedback. We need to gather information about how effective the decision and the implementation thereof has been. Here you can see a visual representation of the 6 steps in the managerial decision-making process. Let's take a closer look at each. Step 1. The recognition that a decision needs to be made. A problem or opportunity can give rise to this. A problem might be that the organization has accomplished less than they set out to. An opportunity might be that there's potential for them to exceed their stated goals. And so this would bring to the forefront that certain decisions need to be made. Next is the diagnosis and analysis of the causes that lead to the decision. So, is there a state of disequilibrium affecting the organization? When and where did it occur? To who did it happen? And is there urgency that needs to be addressed? Also, are any of the events that we need to pay attention to interconnected? Next, we look at the development of alternatives. If it's a program decision, then feasible alternatives are very easy to identify, and they've already probably been written down in the organization's rules and procedures. However, if it's a non-program decision, then we need to develop new custom courses of action that will address the needs of the organization and present satisfying solutions. Step 4 involves selecting the desired alternative. One must be selected, so the organization's managers have to choose the most promising solution that meets the overall goals and objectives of the organization while observing the values that they stand for. The choice that managers make will depend on their propensity to take risk, which is their willingness to see how things will work out and engage in risky behavior. The implementation of the chosen alternative involves managerial and administrative skills and should remind you of the execution phase of strategy. Here we need to make sure that we have the resources and energy necessary to make things happen and ensure that the discussion and trust building that's required is taking place. The last step is evaluation and feedback. We need to gather information to see how the implementation of the decision has gone. There's a philosophy, specifically in technology firms, of move fast and break things. So this is an approach that Facebook uses, and essentially it means that they're trying to learn really fast. So they may try and implement several alternatives in sequence. Each alternative is providing a modest improvement, and so they have to evaluate and learn very quickly before implementing the next solution. How do you make decisions? We've spoken about the types of decisions and decision models, but let's take a closer look at the alternatives that we have in certain decision situations related to the level of risk that accompanies them. Let's start with our last option. It's your last year of school and it's time for you to decide your next move. Here are your alternatives. Do you go to medical school and become a physician, in a career in which you have an 80% chance of success? Or do you follow your dreams and become an actor, even though the opportunity for success is only 20%? Is that an easy decision? How about if you were the president of a manufacturing company and you have to decide about starting a new factory? Do you build the plant in your home country with a 90% chance of producing a modest return on investment? Or do you build a plant in a foreign country with an unstable history, but even though there's a 40% chance of failing, the returns are enormous if you succeed? Let's take our last example in sport. Imagine you're the coach of a team, and in the final seconds of the game, with your team's arch rival, you face a choice. Do you choose a play that has a 95% chance of producing a tie score, or do you go for a play that has a 30% chance of victory, but will lead to certain defeat if it fails? Perhaps your answer to this last question will be impacted to the fact that it's your arch rival and not just any team that you're competing with. Here you can see a visual representation of how your personal decision framework comes together. First, we have the situation. Are we being presented with a programmed or non-programmed decision? Are we using the classical administrative or political model of decision making? And have we followed the decision steps? But we're also combining this with the personal decision style of the individual manager. Is it directive, analytical, conceptual, or behavioral? And ultimately, the combination of these elements gives us the decision choice, which we trust is the best solution for the problem. Chances are that your personal decision framework will influence the choice that you will make in the preceding slide. Do you have a directive style? Do you prefer simple, clear-cut solutions to problems? Or an analytic style, where you perhaps prefer complex solutions based on the analysis of a large amount of data? Do you have a conceptual style? Managers with this style often like a broad amount, varied information for them to base their decisions on. Or do you have a behavioral style? Here, managers have a deep concern for others and they're trying to take that into account in their decision making. Why do managers make bad decisions if all of these things have been taken into consideration? And some of the things we need to be aware of are the biases that we can have. The first one is being influenced by initial impressions. Our first exposure or impression of a situation, whether it's a statistic, a sentence, or an idea, acts as an anchor to our subsequent thoughts. These anchors, past events, trends, or a comment by colleagues, can be quite powerful. Think about an organization that forecasts next year's sales based on last year's sales. But unfortunately, it can also lead to problematic decision making. The second one is justifying past decisions. Managers can fall into the trap of making decisions that justify what they've done in the past, even though those decisions are no longer valid. This is why money often seems to continue going into projects that are no longer succeeding. Managers are actually trying to avoid loss instead of achieve gain. The next one is seeing what you want to see. People frequently, unfortunately, look for information that supports what they already believe or how they already understand the situation, and avoid information that contradicts this. Next is perpetuating the status quo. Managers base decision on what worked on the past and fail to explore new options, but in a changing and innovative world, this can be really problematic. Managers can also be influenced by how they frame the situation, and emotions can play a large role here. If a manager is angry, upset, or even ecstatic, that can influence how they see the decision situation and what decision they end up making. There's even interesting research that says that doctors make less effective decisions when they feel emotions like or dislike for their patients. If they like a patient, they don't want to put them through a painful procedure. But if they dislike them, they could perhaps even blame them for being sick in the first place. Lastly is overconfidence. Managers that have been hugely successful can experience overconfidence in overestimating their ability to predict the future and uncertain outcomes. This can be especially dangerous when they're making risky decisions. Some innovative approaches to decision making involve mechanisms that help reduce the bias-related decisions that we've just discussed. The first idea would be to start with brainstorming, which is a face-to-face interactive group session where people can spontaneously suggest as many ideas as possible for solving a problem. This can be very effective for generating a wide range of alternatives. Next is using hard evidence. Essentially, we're trying to focus on evidence-based decision-making, which means that there's an organization-wide commitment to make more informed and intelligent decisions based on available facts and evidence. Next is engaging in rigorous debate. It's far too easy for senior managers to lead their management team by the nose and tell them what to do. and very important for everyone in a position to influence the decision to say their piece, and not just what can work, but what can potentially lead to failure for the organization. It's also important for managers to avoid groupthink, which refers to the tendency of people in groups to suppress contrary opinions. People can slip into groupthink very easily, especially if it's a homogeneous group where everyone shares the same values and perspective on the world. It means that their desire for harmony outweighs their concern for the quality of the decision. And there can be many hidden pressures for conformity that exist in the group. Managers have to be very aware of this in order to counteract it. The next important consideration is know when to bail. It's important for managers not just to know when to make a decision, but when to pull the plug on a decision that is no longer paying dividends and is not likely to work in the long term. The last idea here is to do a post-mortem. This is also borrowed from the US Army tactic of doing an after-action review. So once everything is said and done, let's analyze what we did, how it worked, and what we can learn. Similar to a post-mortem identifying the cause of death, we want to know what the issues were in the decision-making process. And the idea here is to learn fast and avoid the same mistakes in the future.